got at the Christmas party this year.
That's nice.
The spouses all got her nice necklace pendant.
That's actually pretty nice. Yeah. Just keep that.
You'll have to ask Trevor. He's got some extras. He might be able to give you one. You might be able to pull the I'm the Mayor card.
Good. What's that 3 for? Stand for?
Because we're District 3 of Parkland County. I'm not too fussed with that.
Yeah.
It's on every one of our trucks. Even the ladder, which Parkland has no ownership in, still got the 3 on it.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful December 2nd day. And December has come in like a beaut. If you noticed yesterday, it was gorgeous out there. Today is going to be beautiful, and so is this whole rest of the week. That tells you that if you live in Stony Plain, it is always better to be here. So enjoy the time that you live in Stony Plain. If you don't live in Stony Plain, maybe you should consider moving to Stony Plain, because we have some great people that we like to introduce you to. Thank you. Members of council, there's an agenda before you. If we can have a motion, please, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That council accept the governance and priorities agenda for Monday, December 2nd.
Thank you. Administration, anything to add? Okay. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on is the public input session. This is where we allow residents to address council on anything that's not on the agenda. Is there somebody in chambers like to address council that's not on the agenda? Okay, see none, we'll move on. And today we have 4 presentations. The first one is the service awards for the Stony Plain Fire Department. They requested that they be on a little bit later tonight, so about 6:30. So we'll move on to the next one, which is Mr. Rick Hunan, and he's looking to discuss with council about the responsible pet bylaw.
Ryan.
Anyone? All right, sir. Yeah, please take a seat. Welcome to Chambers, sir.
Thank you. This is my first experience. I've 20 years in Stony. This is awesome.
Well, I'm so glad you came, and I see that you're talking about the kind of bees and urban agriculture.
Yeah, bees. You have like no bees bylaw in town, and it's under the responsible pet ownership, which kind of works. I think we're wrong in not allowing bees in town. If you have a registered hive and a qualified beekeeper, I believe we should have bees in town. They're so great for our environment. Everybody's gardens, everybody's apple trees, everybody's, and one beehive, one small beehive, will do about a 2-kilometer radius. So I live right downtown, but behind the post office. So my beehive downtown, if you put a compass on the Stony Plains map, it just looks after downtown Stony Plain, like Stony Plain municipality. And the whole problem come up in the fall when I was harvesting honey from my hives. I have a Range Road 13. I've registered hives on Range Road 13. I had a bunch of boxes of honey to harvest in the back of my truck. I backed in, and then I had a bacon hive in my backyard that didn't make the winter last year. So I didn't do anything to it. I kind of left it there. And there's honey in there, and robber bees came. And the robber bees were there, and they came and attacked all my honey that I had in the back of my truck. It was awful. It was awful. And then bylaw showed up, and now this is why I'm sitting here, because I found out we had the bylaw against bees. When I first got my hive at Stony Plain, I came to the town, and they said there's no bylaw against it. And, well, okay, good, that everything about that, a hive in my backyard. That's all I want, one hive in my backyard. And everything was fine, like I've had it for years, and all my neighbors across the street all the way around me, they all know I have a beehive in my backyard. And it's been good up until one incident that I had to buy, and it was robber bees from another hive very, very close, and it was crazy. But their bees are not aggressive. They only get aggressive when you open up the hive to work it. You have to work your hive every week. To make sure you have a healthy hive, a healthy queen, and make sure they're not going to swarm. Right? Because if you don't manage your hive, the bees swarm, and then you have trouble in the neighborhood. You gotta watch on work. With all the municipalities in Canada allowing bees, I think Stony Plain not allowing bees is not progressive.
Okay.
But they should be a registered hive, a qualified beekeeper, and all the neighbors around the hive know that it's there.
Okay. Sounds good.
And I think that would be reasonable.
Okay. So how long have you had your hive in Stony Plain? Because you said when you moved here, there was no bylaw.
The 4 years.
4 years?
And I've only been a beekeeper for 6 years.
Yeah, it was-
I'm still a young beekeeper. I'm still learning. There's a lot.
Thank you. And so is there a course or program that you can take to be a beekeeper?
I'm part of the Beekeepers Association through, like BMA. There's an association. I'm a member of that group. There is courses. I never chose any courses. They're hard to get into in the time never worked out. I have a mentor. Another fellow from Stony that I work with is famous. I have a mentor that helps me if I have trouble. There's a lot to it. It's not just something anybody can do.
Exactly.
Without an education, without intelligence.
Okay. I appreciate the fact you brought up that if we do allow this, it has to be a registered hive with a registered beekeeper, not just anybody that can do it, because as you mentioned, there's a weekly maintenance of it and everything else. Okay. Just maybe a question for administration. In terms of the bylaw that prohibits beekeeping, bees are natural in our community, so they hive and they do their own things. So it's just not actually having a hive in your own backyard is prohibited. Is it allowed on lands that are larger than 2 acres?
Your Worship, through to the members of council, it is permitted on lands that are deemed agricultural in our development plan. So if the lands in the town of Stony Plain have an agricultural designation, then bees would be permitted on that property, regardless of size.
Regardless of size, okay.
And my property, my backyard backs onto the post office parking lot, and my back alley shares the back alley with the post office. I drive down the house.
Okay. So thank you. So that's something that we can consider later. I'll just ask council if they have any questions for clarity and understanding. Okay, Councilor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Rick? Rick.
Yes.
Sorry. You had mentioned in your talk there about having to work the hive, otherwise there's a risk of swarming. Can you explain that a little bit more, what working the hive means and what exactly you're doing to prevent swarming?
If bees don't have enough room inside their hive, they'll make another queen. So the queen can take half of the bees. So you have to open your hive and go all the way to the bottom to make sure you don't have queen cells. And if you start seeing queen cells inside your hive, then you have to split your hive and set up a whole new hive so there's enough room for all the bees. Because they multiply so fast. You have to watch them, make sure they have enough room, make sure they have enough room to put honey stores. If they don't have enough room, then they have them leave to go build a hive somewhere else.
And just to follow up, okay, so when you say swarming, that's not necessarily like when they become aggressive and you would have to worry about, that's just them moving?
Bees are swarming are very unaggressive. That's when they're the calmest. Bees only get aggressive when you open the hive, when you're actually there, they're only aggressive to the people that are standing there. There's lots of times I've worked with hives just wearing shorts with a veil over my head, short sleeves. I wear gloves over my head because it was stuck on your head.
Thank you. Councillor Matties?
How are you?
My name is Councillor Matties.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Then it's Councillor Laurie, then, because I thought
Councillor Bennett. Councillor
I
Bennett.
thought I had
can
your
go
hand
first.
up, then him, then you, so.
Mike's already up. Councillor Bennett can go first.
Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. Did you get a ticket for having the beehive in your backyard?
Did I get a ticket?
Yeah, when the
No,
bylaw
I-
came.
The way it worked out was I had 2 weeks to move the hive, but it wasn't an active hive. It was robber bees, and I thought I had a swarm move into the hive. That's why I left it just if that's what was a swarm moved in. And I thought a swarm did, but it was just robber bees. So I was treating it like I had a swarm, but I didn't understand because I'm young and I'm only 6 years in. That I didn't understand, and I learned so much when that happened. Sorry, I missed the question.
I just asked if you had received a ticket for having a beehive in your yard. And
I got a warning and I had 2 weeks to move the hive. And then after 2 weeks, everything was quiet and Brian, his name was his great guy. But officer became, he was fantastic. When Brian came back 2 weeks later to check, I showed him when I opened it up and said, there's nothing.
so,
Everything was good, I never got it.
so if I could ask administration, so what's the process in that kind of situation? So probably somebody reported that there were a bunch of bees over at Rick's and then the bylaw visited, but ordinarily, what's the process in something like this?
Your worship, excuse me, through to Councillor Bennett. So I would assume the same without looking at the file. I would assume that we received a complaint and our staff went over and investigated the complaint, spoke to the owner of the property and investigated it, and their discretion would have followed after that. So some time would have been given to, and I'm sure through a conversation, there was better understanding as to what the situation actually was. And some time was given to rectify, and if the situation wasn't rectified, then we would move into the enforcement realm. So under the bylaw, it's a $100 ticket.
So unless we change the bylaw, then Rick won't be able to reactivate any hives in town.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. First, a question through to administration. As I look at our land use bylaw districts, I don't see anything that defines the agricultural use. I'm wondering if you can explain to me where in town we would find lands that would fall under the agricultural use? And what would be the process of a resident who wished to try and get agricultural use defined for their property?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So the land use bylaw governs the use of land in the town. So the different districts, et cetera, will be shown on the land use bylaw, and you know, majority of the agricultural parcels will be on the extremities or on the outside of town versus the areas that are subdivided and have many residences on them.
Okay. So will those lands be named future development, FD?
That is correct.
So simply put, it's likely on currently undeveloped land, with the exception of maybe one area by Range Road 12. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. You bring a point forward that has been something that's been on my mind for quite a while. Urban agriculture is picking up speed very, very quickly, and we've seen a couple of things over the last little while that show that our bylaws currently don't enable and support urban agriculture, and apiary and beekeeping is one of those items. And so I really appreciate you bringing it forward. And one thing I'd suggest maybe we can work on with administration is that even if we don't necessarily want to go down the road of looking at backyard bees, because obviously there are some certain concerns that come up with that, we do have plenty of opportunities within the town that we could start to encourage the keeping of hives through potentially a citizen-led group, so on and so forth. We've got great areas like our Willow Park, areas like our golf course. You can look at some of the community associations. Think of how our community garden at the Multicultural Center would love to have a hive there, because that certainly would help as people use those gardens as they continue to work towards food security and sustainability and being self-sufficient. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention again, because it's something that I think we do need to start having more conversations and start working on ways, not just for beekeeping, but that we can encourage some more urban agriculture responsibly within the town limits, so we can help people begin to look at what better ways for them to achieve food security and personal sustainability.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And any questions? You want to set up a program if I could help? I would love that. It's very important.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mattis, you had a question now?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Rick. Just a couple questions. So are there other members of our community that are keeping beehives that maybe you're working with that besides just the one individual that you spoke about? And then secondly, you spoke about other municipalities that you know of that allow bees. And can you tell me a little bit about that as well?
Well, Edmonton's, St. Albert, Spruce Grove, they all love these.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. I'm very accurate.
Oh,
And with the speakers,
no worries.
I'm having a very hard time hearing.
So the next question was with regards to another group, or is there a group that is formed in our community that is knowledgeable about bees, and maybe like a not an association but a small group that works together for a common cause?
Well, there's the Beekeepers Association.
Right. Yeah, that's Edmonton. Yeah.
Which is a great launch. And then there's a Facebook group as well, Canadian Beekeepers.
Okay.
Okay.
That I'm also a member of. But there's lots of groups of support. It's a very tight knit little community
Okay.
where we have to help each other out, because there's lots of diseases and issues with lives.
Right.
And if you don't manage them and you miss something, you lose your eye.
Okay.
And, it's tough actually to know what you need to know to manage a life properly.
So
Yeah, because of the corona lights, corona lights are the worst. They made this much more. Knowing how to deal with it and proper medications. Tough to keep it all right. Mostly, I feel if your neighbors are okay, all the way around, you should be able to have a life.
Okay.
You said if I thought there were all your neighbors all around you, so I would say, oh, yeah, that's okay, it's a high.
Okay.
okay. Thanks.
Thank you much for bringing it forward, and I think our MDP does allow us, we try to keep the environment in our thoughts when we're doing zoning and planning. So urban agriculture is one of those, and hopefully that we'll eventually have a discussion around this council chambers about how we can increase the urban agriculture in our communities. And it might be beehives, it might be urban chickens, it might be urban forests, it might be community gardens, but it's all part of the whole economic environment thing that we're looking at to increasing that food security and allowing residents to have that choice. But based on what you presented, it looks like it is a very in-depth subject, and it's just not for everybody. So that we'll have to give some consideration of how we do something like that that allows, provides that safety and security for the rest of the residents. As you mentioned, there's a 2-mile radius that the bees will fly. So that's a lot of radius, and what happens if we have too many hives? So that's a lot of questions that council will have to walk through and go through, but we definitely appreciate your offer to sit down and help us, and we'd like to continue the conversation another time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Honeyman. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Yeah, that's interesting. Moving on to 4.3, we have the Westview Health Center, and I believe we have, yes, Ellen Elliott is with us today. So welcome to Council Chambers. Again, we have a gallery behind us, and if you can talk directly into the mic so it actually picks it up. So we'll let the IT get set up so that we actually have a presentation. But again, welcome to Chambers again, Ms. Elliott. We definitely appreciate you taking the time. Is it not working? Okay, do we have it on another computer that we can put it on? Okay, as administration's getting ready, why don't you go ahead and start and just kind of give us a little brief update, and then hopefully everything ties in.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to come to speak on behalf of Council. I've spoken to Mayor and Council, I think just over a year or so ago, and at that time had provided an update on the capacity review and the strategic options analysis. The capacity review focuses on how we can continue to serve the community very well within our existing space and our existing resources. And the strategic options analysis looked at the footprint of the Westview Health Centre and essentially the need for future space planning. And those two processes continue at Westview. We continue to work with the Edmonton Zone Alberta Health Services and take into consideration both the current program needs and the projected program needs to make sure we can continue to provide service in the community. Thank you. So when Westview opened, the service area population was 52,000. Now we say our service area population is about 93,000. And that is requiring us to be pretty creative with the use of space at Westview and work with our communities in different ways to make sure we can still meet the needs within our current space. We have about 600 staff associated with Westview Health Centre now and around 90 physicians and surgeons. One of the bigger challenges that we have is that we have 23 inpatient beds in our medicine unit. We operate 27 beds on an ongoing basis and continue to have what we call emergency inpatients. So people who are admitted to the hospital, but there isn't a hospital bed available for them at that time, and so they'll wait in emergency sometimes for several days before we can move them over. On the inpatient unit in those 23 to 27 beds, we see almost 1,000 admissions a year at Westview Health Centre. And those admissions are really from our service area, from our community. We in order to meet the community and the needs of the community the best, we've adopted what was called an elder-friendly approach, and we work very closely with the local physicians, with home care, with other community groups within the community to try to support people to get well and to return home and to maintain quality of life in home as long as possible. So there's a number of names associated with that, but it's an approach that's used nationally and internationally to try to support seniors particularly and people with chronic disease to maintain healthy lifestyle at home. Just a few comments from different people. Because of the limited number of acute care beds at Westview, there are times where we will encourage people to accept beds at other hospitals within the zone. For the most part, we are able to move some people, but there are many people who that presents a hardship and they really prefer to stay at Westview. The emergency department, the biggest thing with the emergency department as Westview is how we are shifting care in the community over the last decade or so by working with the primary care network and with home care and outpatient clinics. And what we've been able to do is actually the emergency department visits are decreasing slightly, but the acuity is shifting significantly. So when we talk about acuity, we talk about a CTAS or triage score, and that's a score when someone comes into the emergency department and is assessed by the registered nurse, and it determines kind of how acutely ill or injured the person is. The triage score now at Westview is about 71% of presenting patients are CTAS 1, 2, and 3, which is the same basically as the Misericordia, the Sturgeon. So the level of acuity is shifting dramatically, and we've been able to do that by offering right care in the right place initiatives within the community. So the physicians have increased same-day access. You can absolutely see a family physician within Stony Plain and Spruce Grove every day, every evening. There are family physicians accepting new patients within our communities, and access has really improved. And so it's been working with the primary care network to provide better options for people so they don't have to come to the emergency department when they have minor injuries and illnesses. We continue to do a fairly significant amount of day surgery at Westview and endoscopy as well. And just a few comments posted here for the patient experience. So when we look at the work we do, we always take the patient and family experience into consideration. It's a very significant part of the work is to provide excellent care as well as efficient and sustainable care. Long-term care and hospice, we're home to 40 long-term care residents, and we have 6 hospice beds. And the long-term care, we have about 19 admissions a year, so about half the beds will turn over in long-term care each year, and 65 to 85 hospice admissions per year at Westview. And again, it primarily serves our local community, our local service area, but it is open to admissions from within the Edmonton zone or elsewhere as well. The ambulatory clinics and transition services are a team of nurses, nurse practitioners, and physicians who provide a number of different clinics. And this is one of the primary ways that we've been able to pull work, non-emergent work, out of the emergency department. So we're seeing about 16,000 visits a year through this service as well. And they work very closely with the family physicians. So that linkage back to family physicians is key to how we can continue to function within Westview. And again, I've only included the very positive comments, but we are absolutely open to those that are less positive as well. And in fact, I encourage, and we encourage at Westview Health Centre, we encourage people to use the patient feedback process. It's a very important learning process for us, and we welcome all comments. Diagnostic imaging is one of the challenges for the site in terms of access to diagnostics at Westview. We have regular X-ray offered 24/7. Ultrasound is offered at Westview Monday to Friday days, but we send a large volume of patients off-site primarily to the Misericordia for CT exams, as well as ultrasounds on evenings, weekends, holidays as well. Some of those patients, depending on the nature of their illness or injury, are able to go by private vehicle and return to Westview for their results and follow-up. Some of them do require, for their own patient safety, to be transported by ambulance. Home living is one of the growth areas in health, and that's not only in our area, but across the province and across the nation. And right now, we have about 950 clients on home living within our service area. They've expanded the number of hours of service that are provided today, as well as the supports that are offered in home, so that people can stay home and be supported more effectively. They've also improved and increased the amount of palliative and end-of-life support, and so there's generally around 40 people in our community who are end-of-life palliative care, the 6 hospice beds, and then we often will have a few people in our acute care as well who are palliative or end-of-life. That's very, very important for both the staff and physicians. We pride ourselves in being able to provide excellent palliative care in a number of spaces within our community and our site. One of the initiatives that we've done over the last few years that you may have heard of is a community dementia collaborative. Stony Plain FCSS has actually been one of the key partners in this, as well as Spruce Grove and Parkland County. The libraries have been very great partners as well, and a number of other community groups, businesses, etc. And the intention of this is we've worked with people with early dementia and their families and looked at what is required from the community to help them remain engaged and active within the community. And so there's been many initiatives done, most recently the development of videos for business groups, restaurants, banks, etc., on some small tips on how they can serve people with dementia in a more effective way. Public health, over 1,200 child vaccines a month, about 94 births a month average in our community, and about 800 contacts with new parents each month. The work within public health is to be that resource and support to new parents and ensure safe immunization of the young and elderly people. And they've really changed their approaches in terms of giving people more opportunities or options in terms of how they receive their service. So we traditionally, it had always been home visiting, but now parents can choose if they'd like a home visit, an in-clinic visit, or just a follow-up phone call. Addictions and mental health is also continuing to grow and a continuing area of focus and need in healthcare. And we've had a number of initiatives over the last few years that have improved the access within our own communities. So there is an addictions, mental health, adult addictions and mental health within Westview Health Centre. It's also offered both in Spruce Grove and Evansburg by outreach. There's Children's Mental Health Clinic within Stanwell Ocean Building in Spruce Grove, and just fairly recently, within the last year and a half, the Primary Care Network and Alberta Health Services has partnered together to fill in a gap that is a youth mental health clinic for people age 11 to 25, and it's a walk-in clinic on Mondays and Fridays and gives people immediate access within our community. And in addition to that, Alberta Health Services has, within the last year, established a 24/7 central access and central intake, as well as a walk-in emergency access at Anderson Hall by the Royal Alec. So very important, and hopefully people can spread the word on this. Oftentimes people dealing with mental health run into crisis situations and they need immediate support, and so it's very important that people realize that they can get that immediate support either through the emergency department or at the Royal Alec Anderson Hall. And there's a number of crisis lines available as well. At Westview, we've benefited from a number of recent capital initiatives. One is a upgrade or replacement of the nurse call system and the fire alarm system. And if you've been at Westview recently, you'll notice we've been undergoing some renovations in our diagnostic imaging, ultrasound, and emergency department. And that is to actually create some more clinical space out of previously used storage space in diagnostic imaging. But the big news is that we are going to be going live on Connect Care in May of 2020. We'll be in the one of the first sites across the province that are going to have the opportunity to do this. It's the electronic medical record that will be available for each Albertan. We'll have a patient portal so that you can actually look up your own lab results, your own diagnostic imaging, your own information on the health record, regardless of where you are. Once all the sites in Alberta have rolled out, regardless of where you are, if you're vacationing up in Grand Prairie or down in Medicine Hat, there will be one record for you, and the healthcare team would be able to access that. So it's going to improve, just simply by that fact alone, it's going to improve safety and efficiency within our system. And it's going to transform how we share and work with patients and families around their health information. The University Hospital Stollery Mazankowski K. Edmonton Clinic went live on Connect Care the first part of November, and within 3 weeks of going on, the staff were already talking about the benefits, the positive things that they were seeing from it, the efficiencies that they found out of it as well. And so at Westview, we're very excited to work towards launching at Westview in May. And as I mentioned, there's a number of benefits. One of the comments we have from patients who are involved as patient advisors that they see is that they'll not have to retell their story time and again. So there will be many patient benefits. Finally, I just want to acknowledge the great support that we have from our community. We have about 150 volunteers who help us out at Westview and improve the patient experience. That's very much appreciated. And we have 3 active fundraising groups that support us in terms of equipment purchases, program enhancements. So we are most appreciative of that. And I welcome your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I'm very excited about Connect Care and hopefully to see how that gives patients a lot better understanding of where they're at, and also allows care providers to actually do that as well, instead of having to jump over 3 or 4 different doctors trying to find the right medical records, which is very good. And just on behalf of myself, Mayor Houston, and Anne-Lisa Jensen, the Councillor of Parkland County, thank you for the tour that you gave us, and then the informative kind of a snapshot that you presented to us, and see where we are, and then definitely seeing the renovations there, how that you're trying to use every inch of that health center to maximize the coverage and the service provided. So if we let you know, thank you for that. And also, one of the priorities of this council is to have an expansion of the Westview Health Center. As you mentioned, when it was opened, we served the population just roughly over 50,000. We're getting close to 100. So we've doubled that, but yet our health center has been the same size. We've lost a lot of services that we had originally, and now we've kind of come to a few niche areas that we need to kind of expand on and to grow the services in our region. Mm-hmm. So thank you for your continued work.
Thank you.
Members of council, any questions for clarity, understanding? Councillor Loy?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ellen, for the report. It's always good to get good news from a very important institution within our town and that serves such a great number of people. I have 2 things. So you mentioned the CT scan. Mm-hmm. Is there, first off, do we have capacity for it at the current Westview thing? And is there anything that's of coming down that they're looking at getting that? Because there's a lot of people that, as you say, we move out for that to the other hospitals. Mm-hmm. That's question number 1.
Yeah, provincial, the diagnostic imaging planning is done at a provincial level, so there is a list, and we are on the list. In terms of the physical space for the equipment. It would require some either renovations or addition to accommodate the CT. And that was included in the strategic options analysis plan. So that kind of background work has been completed. And so it comes down to operating budget and the capital budget for that.
Okay, thank you very much. And my last question, I noticed up there says 94 babies.
Every month.
Pardon me?
Yeah, every month. Sorry, those babies are not delivered at Westview. We don't deliver babies anymore.
Thank you. That's what was my question. I didn't think we did.
No, you're correct. You're correct. That's public health visits within the community. So there's 94 babies within our service area that public health goes out and visits at home or sees at the clinic.
Things must be good for some people.
Councillor Bennett?
There were a couple programs, Ellen, I wondered if you could highlight a little bit more. I was able to go to your community dementia support collaboration session that you had, and I watched the videos that had been produced. They were very informative, and so I'd like to know about where to find those videos and how do you get those out? They were made specifically for banks and grocery stores and restaurants. So how are those facilities aware of those, and are there some training sessions that have gone along with it?
The work of the Dementia Collaborative has been going on for a couple of years now, and like I said, it included many community partners. The development of the videos was an additional grant. We're always looking for the grant funding to support these types of initiatives. And so the grant allowed a local videographer to direct and develop those. We had a volunteer who has early dementia and is a wonderful spokesperson for people with dementia, and she's the star of the video clips. We did an official launch, and now the video clips will be posted to the Alzheimer's Society website, and then we will have links. We're going to be approaching Alberta Health Services and all of the municipalities to attach links so that people can access that, but the main primary home will be the Alzheimer's Society.
Okay, thank you. And then the second program, and I forget what you called it, maybe it was SMILE, and it was the inoculations for children and the groundbreaking program that our Westview has developed in order to help children who are afraid of getting their needles.
Yes, it was called PI, Positive Immunization Experience. And it was developed at Westview. It was a Made in Westview initiative. The manager at that time was a clinical psychologist, and the nurses with their experience recognized that we could do a better job of looking at that immunization experience, which quite frankly has been done the same way for decades. And so they looked at distraction and what works and what scientific evidence there is for that. And they developed the positive immunization experience, which included education for parents on techniques of how to hold, how to speak, how to prepare children for immunization, as well as the actual experience at the clinic. And they have had wonderful success in improving that experience for children, that it has actually been rolled out or is rolling out now across the entire province. So a very positive, groundbreaking kind of experience for kids. And yeah, it's really exciting. We're very proud of that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for remembering that, Councillor Bennett.
Councillor Lowry?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ellen, for the presentation this evening. A couple of things. First, in relation to the CT referrals and the patients transported, you said there was 500 patients transported for diagnostic imaging. Do you have a ballpark idea as to what the cost incurred by AHS for 500 patient transport would be?
I couldn't say off the top of my head, but we have developed business case to look at that. And like I said, it's part of that advocacy for that initiative at Westview. It is considered amongst the many priorities within the province, so we continue to work on that.
Excellent. Yeah, and I fortunately or unfortunately have been part of the CT referral, thankfully not having to be transported for mine, but it did incur a delay in my treatment and a delay in getting me out of some significant pain. And so, it would have been fantastic to have that at our facility. And I commend you for the continual improvement in the facility and continually pushing for the needs of our residents and our community. As always, recognize the fact that our population has doubled. We've been without maternity ward services for approximately 8 to 9 years. My daughter was actually one of the last babies born at Westview Health Center, which I'm incredibly proud of and incredibly disappointed, because I think everybody should have the opportunity to have their child born in their community if a facility does exist. So, anything that we can do to continue to support that, gladly we'd help advocate for that. As well as Councillor Bennett, I was in attendance at the dementia launch of the videos, and absolutely fantastic initiative, just again showing how much positive work Westview and the PCN is doing in our area to continue to work on initiatives that aren't necessarily just within a building, and to continue to push health out into our community in different ways in which our community can help ease the burden on the actual facility itself in different ways. So I commend you on the work, and please keep it up because our community really appreciates it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ellen, for coming out this evening. My question is, in addition to our growth of from 52,000 to 93,000, well, we're projected to double again, in the next 25 years. So, with regards to the existing site, what do you expect, or what are you planning for in terms of change moving forward? Whether that's a service that's provided there or elsewhere, what is it going to look like?
We have, with the strategic options analysis, that included work within the zone. So all of the programs and services were included in that conversation. And any of the planning within the Edmonton zone is inclusive of the Westview site. So there, as you're aware, there is a new Edmonton hospital in the works. And so we're looking at the implications of that would have within the zone. In terms of kind of projecting what Westview will look like 10 years from now, like I said, we have developed the strategic options analysis, which was a phased approach, recognizing sometimes funding comes in envelopes. So we've looked at, there is a need for increased long-term care or continuing care beds. Westview is fortunate we do have land, so that was part of the conversation. The CT has been part of the conversation really since Westview was built. So that, that continues to be considered and advocated for. And we also have room for additional acute care beds, so that, all of those concepts and ideas are always kind of on the table. The economy right now is going to be the limiting factor, and the needs across the province. So how Westview is in terms or prioritized, I really couldn't say how that's going to look. What I do know is that what we can do and what we'll continue to do is, and it's what's being done, provincially, nationally, and internationally, is exactly what Councillor Laurie said, is the concept of looking beyond the facility and how do we provide health and support health. There are an unlimited number of beds in the community. We have to look at how we can support people better in their homes for all services, even things like surgery. It's becoming less and less invasive, so therefore people require less time in facility as they recover from surgery. And so part of it is to keep up with the technology and the practices within healthcare, and recognize that it doesn't necessarily mean building bigger and bigger hospitals to serve a community well. And frankly, Westview Health Center, Westview Primary Care Network, and our communities are very, very good examples of that. And we are recognized within the province of doing exactly that. We've shifted how healthcare is provided by giving people better and more accessible options in the community, and we'll continue to do that. until such time as they can build on to the site.
Just have one follow-up. Just one follow-up question. So when we talk about mobile services, is there anywhere where they have a mobile CT scan or something is that at all a possibility?
There is such a thing as mobile CT, yes. There's more mobile X-ray as well, even within the city of Edmonton. So those are options. The biggest factor right now is the operating budget. It is probably the limiting factor.
Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming tonight, Ellen. Great presentation. One of the things that really caught my attention was your volunteer base, 150 people. That's a pretty outstanding amount of volunteers when most organizations today lack the volunteer base. I'm just wondering what you do to attract people to volunteer within that organization and what opportunities you may still need within that organization.
We do have volunteers in our surgical program, within public health, home care, but the bulk of our volunteers are actually with the long-term care and hospice, and it seems to draw people in terms of the value that they can add to the quality of life for the residents and hospice residents. We have really had a focus on intergenerational work as well. So we have reading buddies, young people who come and enjoy either reading to or being read to by our long-term care clients. That happens at Whispering Waters and Good Sam as well. So intergenerational work is really important, both for the seniors as well as the young people. We've had different service groups and student groups come and interact with the long-term care as well. And we have a very dedicated group of specially trained palliative volunteers who support additional needs within the hospice. So there's lots of different opportunities. And we also have job shadow opportunities for older students.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any more questions, comments? No. So on behalf of council and the residents, thank you very much for the update, and thank you for the work that you guys do over at Westview. And it's been tremendous to work with you and to see how Westview has transformed itself and to continue to provide the services. So rest assured that council will be again on the advocacy path on your behalf for the expansion to provide more services to our residents, and also a new CT scanner. I think you mentioned operating is one of the biggest holdbacks, but actually if you sit down and do the math of how much it costs for having 2 paramedics plus the ambulance, the gas, and the 3 to 4 hours it'll take to drive somebody there to do the CT scan, you're looking at probably about $3 million to $4 million annually in costs to transport somebody. I think you mentioned about roughly 500 times. A CT scanner is probably $1 million and change. So, you know, even if we do the math and we can save the government $100,000, that's $100,000 less that I, as a taxpayer, have to pay. So I think we'll be talking to the MLA about this as well to make sure that we understand the numbers. And if we're looking at cost savings and how to provide services at a little bit lower cost, that's definitely one way that we can do that.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you very much. Okay. Members of council, judging from our foyer, it is full of firefighters, so we're going to jump back to 4.1 is the service awards. If somebody can open the door and invite them in. So members of council, this is a yearly occurrence for us to recognize members of our fire department for the work that they have done in the community, but also for milestones that they've achieved with the fire department, and also milestones of recognition for provincial firefighting. And today we're joined by quite a few of them. As soon as everyone gets in, welcome, Chief. Yes. Right. Do you understand that if you come closer, we're not contagious. We don't give you cooties, right?
constant state of readiness. They got ready to pounce on the action. So.
Nobody wants to join you up there.
No. Come on, guys. Okay, so on behalf of council, welcome to council chambers to the Stony Plain Fire Department. As I mentioned earlier, this is a yearly occurrence where we take the time to recognize and thank the members for their service. I think today we recognize 5, 10, 20, and 25 years with the Stony Plain Fire Department, and also the provincial awards for 22 and 32 years as well. And it's always an honor to have everyone in our chambers. You guys provide a service that is invaluable to our safety and to the protection of our residents. We thank you for what you do. We thank you for the commitment. And we also thank you and your family for your sacrifices that you have given up so that you can provide those first responders and first calls for us on behalf. So I think the chief is here, and I'll let the chief start, and then we'll go out with the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just like to say thank you for the opportunity to bring the crew to council tonight for our annual event. It is a highlight for us as well. Just like to focus on some of the dedication of our men and women behind us here. This was the busiest year in our 111-year history in the town. We're at 595 calls to date. Our busiest year ever was 2018 at 568. So we got another month, and so we're gonna shatter records for sure. We've put over 1,000 people through our fire prevention program through the station. So we've managed to spread the fire prevention message to many children and adults alike. So again, that's our 5th year in a row, over 1,000 people. We had a successful emergency preparedness day in May. We've had roughly about 600 people attend Heritage Park for our annual event there, and we showcased it with the side-by-side bird cell with the sprinklered versus non-sprinklered. I mean, anybody that was there or saw the video was an eye-opener for sure. We will have 10 new recruits starting in January, so that'll bring us to 55 members. So again, we're got a really dedicated crew, and we're looking to bring on some new blood, and we start the process all over again. And I'd just like to say thank you for the support that give us the tools and the support that we can do the job. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. So this is, I think, Chief, you and I will be doing the presentations, and the general manager will be reading out the names and just a little bit about each firefighter that's getting awarded.
Okay, Your Worship, members of council, so we'll start with the 5-year service award, and that's firefighter Matt Barron. Moving to a 10-year service award with the fire department is qualified Lieutenant Joe Hudebol. Year service award, Captain Jamie Adams. a 25-year service award, Captain Darren Badry, who also retired from the Stony Plain Fire Department in 2019.
But they too, starting a new program for retired members. So Darren's going to be the first one to get a R. It's so on, it's too big. Retired member of the Stony Fire.
So we'll move into recognition from the province of Alberta for a 22-year bar is again Captain Jamie Adams. Second 22-year bar is Chief Trevor Mistel.
And for some reason, worship with the adjustment for the there, you just have to the emergency service medal covers EMS, fire, and emergency management. So our director of emergency management, Carl, is also with here. For some reason, got cut off. Blame that one on technology. You know, Carl will.
Thanks, Chief. So same Alberta 32-year bar, and that's Captain Rick Mays.
We got to tell one other medal tonight. The Alberta Emergency Services Medal is a 12-year medal that's for dedication toward your department and to your community. We've got one member tonight here that's an icon in our community. It was the first non-frontline member to be given this award. Jim comes down once a week and he helps out with some chores and always down making coffee. And his official title is, he recognized by the province, coffee shop information officer.
Squeeze it more. chairs back, and we'll just scoot in there.
So I don't know if anybody knows this, but Captain Adams saved my life. It's true. If he hadn't relentlessly teased me about smoking, I never would have quit.
Good.
Nice cane, Schultz.
No.
I got a couple up here.
Yeah. Yeah, they make me stand on my tippy toes.
Fire.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Members of council, we have a department challenge coin that's just been minted and just made public, so like each member to get one.
Oh, he's already got one, actually. Now I got one for both jackets.
Exactly. So you never do
So
that.
does that entitle me to any, free access to the gym? Just show them your big rig.
It does not work on the swipe pad. There is no RFID.
Just check out things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keeps you warm, yes. Right. Right, Council, that was a good presentation, and as you can tell, thank you very much, Jimmy Shep. Definitely appreciate the work that you've done in our community for a while, and well deserved. Thank you. So, members of council, and I'm probably sure a lot of people are wondering, with our entire fire department here, who was looking after our community. It's a good thing that we work regionally well with both Parkland County and the City of Spruce Grove. We have mutual aid, and they were informed that we were doing this so that they were double on standby just in case that we had an issue that happened in the town of Stony Plain. So, thank you. Thank you, Chief. And looking at the stats and from the quarterly updates, our fire department has been extremely busy this year. As the chief mentioned, that last year was a record year in number of calls, and this year, even with a month left, they already surpassed that. So again, I look forward to the fire services master plan coming up, and maybe looking at some recommendations to give them a hand or assistance so that they have the resources to carry out the work that they're doing right now. And moving back with our presentation, move on to 4.4, and today we're also joined by the Stony Plain Chamber of Commerce. We do have President Deborah and Executive Director Sarah. So welcome, ladies. Hopefully that presentation works really good and you don't have to take 5 minutes to find it. And again, and I believe both mics are on, so if you can speak directly into the mic so it can be captured, please.
Thank you for allowing us to come, Mayor Choi, and give an update on the track task force and where we are now. We are nearing the end of the process, so this is probably a very timely presentation. So track, that was born some time ago. The task force was born probably a couple of years ago, and then really came to fruition and started its journey in this year, in January. Sat at the table, we have representation from Stony Plains, Bruce Grove, Wobberman and rural Parkland County, and the same people have remained on the task force up until today. So why was the decision made to unify the chambers? It was being talked about many years ago and has been on and off the table since then. It really came to a point that the right people were at the table and the desire to unify came about. Lots of people talk about that we are going to be the 4th largest chamber in the province, but more importantly for us, it's about numbers and coming to the table in terms of advocacy on behalf of our regional business community. We know that across the 3 chambers, so across ourselves, Bruce Grove and Wobberman, that we replicate many events. We do much of the same thing. And for our members, it's very difficult for certain members to make a decision of where they want to put their membership dollars. And the governance model, as we move forward, we are working a lot with a couple of professional organisations to truly move into the world of governance. So for us as a Chamber of Commerce, you probably know that we are incorporated under the Board of Trade Act. That is defined by a geographical boundary, and we adhere to bylaws. There are a number of points in Chamber's bylaws that are the same, some of them differ, and everything we do, if we change the bylaws, and everything that we've been doing through the Track Task Force has to be agreed with Corporations Canada. And one of the reasons we really want to move forward to promote and improve trade and commerce and the economic development of the region in partnership with the municipalities and other key stakeholders. So we are a not-for-profit organisation, but we aren't a charity. We're governed by an elected board of directors that are accountable to our members. We provide members with value-added programs. You probably know a number of those. We currently offer one of the best medical programs. Many small businesses take out our medical program to allow their staff to benefit from the program as well. We have great ability in terms of our pool with certainly provincial government and federal government. And we are part of a larger federation. So there are 124 provincial chambers of commerce with 400 chambers across the country. Alberta is one of the largest, has one of the largest chambers as well. So when we sit at that advocacy table with the Canadian chambers, the Alberta chambers represent more chambers than any other chamber. So our members voted for unification on April the 10th. We then moved into the planning phase where we awarded a company P's and Q's to come and work with us to work on a vision document and a business plan. That same company is going to be coming to work with us on December the 13th as we then plan our strategic plan. We retained legal counsel for the purpose of our memorandum of agreement between the 3 chambers, and that legal counsel also worked on our bylaws before those bylaws got submitted to Corporations Canada. And we also worked on the boundary extension as well with legal counsel. That's just a picture there of all of the people that have been committed to this unification, and that's the Track Task Force members, and you probably know every single one of those on there, I imagine. So Spruce Grove and Wobberman now have a motion on the table to dissolve, and they will be dissolving come the end of the year. All our paperwork has been filed now to Corporations Canada. We have been advised that they've received the paperwork, but as yet we haven't been given a case advisor. So that case advisor will work with myself, and we'll go backwards and forwards to just change paperwork as needed. We may have to reach out to our members for additional motions. We don't know at the moment. So one of the things that is exciting for us is the rebranding, the new branding of the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce. And again, we have reached out to professional services, a company called Hello Public. And last week we had the unveiling of 3 prototypes of the logo. We have made the decision on the logo that we preferred. They have gone back and they're going to do some minor changes for us. But we really hope that when we go to the elections on the 10th of December, that we will be able to unveil that logo. So like I've said, there's various steps now that we follow. So we know that potentially that we're not going to get agreement by Corporations Canada for about 6 months. That being said, we are going to, from the 1st of January, we will be operating as the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce. So the boards of the 3 chambers will be dissolved. We can dissolve a board at any time as per our bylaws. The staff of the Spruce Grove will be released from employment. All of the members from Spruce Grove and from Wobberman will become members of the new chamber. And it's strange, but we still work to the Stony Plain bylaws until our bylaws are agreed by Corporations Canada. And then the election for the new board of directors will happen on the 10th of December. So this is what we're going to look like. It's going to be a 16-member board with representation from Wobberman, Parkland County, Spruce Grove, and rural Parkland County. There will be the executive committee of the chair-elect, the vice chair, and the treasurer. Staffing, there will be a change of name to CEO, and the potential positions will be an office manager. We have, as of today, we do have a communication and social media manager. That position is being paid for by Parkland County in the interim through a funding application. That position is responsible for delivering all the communication as we move forward. There will be the membership coordinator and, importantly, visitor services. So visitor services will carry on exactly as it is at the moment, working in partnership with yourself, with Spruce Grove, and hopefully Parkland County. That's a really important partnership to us. And then we have contracted positions of a bookkeeper and potentially a special events coordinator. And then financially, so around 35% of our revenue comes from membership fees. Our largest expense, as many businesses, are our staffing costs. And then we attract revenue through a number of avenues, group benefit plans, and then events, luncheons, and grants and sponsorship. The current budgets, so the good thing for us moving forward is that we will just be working to one budget. Come January the 1st, will be one budget which will make life a lot easier, and we will be really able to see those streamed revenues as well. And then we have paid for professional services, for, as I said, for a business plan. We've engaged with a HR consultant who continues to work with us, We've paid for services to rebrand. We've paid for legal counsel. And then as we move forward, we will be looking to rebrand visitor services as well. I've already spoken to that, so this is where visitor services is at the moment. We, Spruce Grove, have a partnering agreement with their municipality, as do we. We currently have an agreement with Parkland County, but moving forward, again, we would really be interested in 3 municipalities coming together to really better understand visitor services for the region. And then for us, so we are members as our chamber members of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I hold a position with the Alberta Chamber Executives and the Canadian Chamber Executives. We are members of the Greater Edmonton Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we are a certified Alberta Business Information Provider. And there's some of the programs that we currently engage in business mentoring. Spruce Grove has a program for junior chamber members and youth mentorship. We did, up until a couple of weeks ago, apply through the STEP program for visitor services. That program is no longer. So we will still apply through the Canadian Summer Student Grant. And then this is our boundary. So one of the things that has to happen when we submitted our paperwork to Corporations Canada was the boundary. You'll see by that boundary, we are taking virtually the whole of that boundary apart from the top left-hand corner. So we're not taking Entwistle and Enberg. So their chamber sits half in Yellowhead County and half in Parkland County. But everything else virtually on that map becomes the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce. And then I'm going to hand over to Deb.
Good evening. So last Thursday and Friday, the nominating committee sat together. The nominating committee consisted of representation from Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, Wabamun, and we had and then we had another one from the Alberta Chambers of Commerce that was sitting at the table as well. We spent all 2 days interviewing 24 candidates. We're still going to be accepting nominations, or others can still step forward up until December 9th at 4:30 p.m. The election is going to be on December the 10th. There will be the chair, the chair-elect, the vice chair, the treasurer, and 12 other directors. And I don't know what else to say.
I think for us, the process, and I'm not part of the process because of being staff, but it was incredibly robust this year. There was an interview process to go through. There was a skills matrix to go through. And we'd taken a lot of advice and guidance from other chambers, including the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, to really consider attracting the right people to the board. And to say we were overwhelmed with 24 candidates stepping forward, I think is a huge accolade that business community want to be involved in this chamber. They see how important it is, and it's a credit, I think, to have to run for an election. So that nominating committee, they will probably tomorrow be releasing the names of the people that they are recommending. So the nominating committee is there to for due diligence to the membership, really, that the membership, because obviously the membership can't interview all the candidates, they rely on that nominating committee that is struck as per the bylaws to interview people, to make sure that forthcoming directors really understand what's involved in terms of the time commitment that is needed to be a board member. And Really, for this year, we've really looked at the skills that people bring to the table as well, and the industries that they're representing, just to make sure that we've got a really sound cross-section of the business community as we move forward. And like Deb says, that doesn't mean that it precludes anybody from stepping forward. Members in good standing can step forward up until 4:30 on the 9th of December, and their name will be added to that slate for the following morning. It's just that obviously if you've been through that nominating process and you're being recommended, that is being sent out there to the community now, the business community, that you know that you're going to be recommended as a director for the board. And then that's it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative of where we've gone in the last couple of years of merging the three chambers to provide a better service for residents. Before I open the floor for members of council to ask questions, I have one question that actually concerns me quite a bit, is the fact that the chamber is open and is directed by a board. There's 24 candidates, and you've interviewed 24 that have their name forward. And from my understanding, the committee will be recommending names to be approved, right? So are you also recommending a name for the chair-elect, the vice chair?
Yeah.
How does that go when the committee recommends somebody for the chair and that person does not win the chair? How does the other person feel that was not recommended?
So, well, I was going to say, through the democratic process, the members are the people that are going to vote in who they want as chair or chair-elect or treasurer or directors. So it is still down to the members.
Yes, but your recommendation will be not to recommend that one individual. For example, if there's three people going for the chair position,
yeah,
you've interviewed all three of them, and you guys feel that this person A has the better skill set for that.
Yeah.
So you guys put it in your news release, and you tell all your chamber members, please vote for blah, 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 because we believe that they have the best skill set. So are you just rating them all, or just saying, here's their skill set, here's their skill set, here's their skill set, and leaving it at that? Because I heard recommendation, and that doesn't sit well with me.
No, we vetted, well, they were vetted, but that was all, we use the term recommendation, but we're not I don't know, I guess that's the wrong word to use.
So I'm trying to figure this out, because it's, if you know, I being a board member, like a previous board members elsewhere, and also a member of the chamber, I would feel, if I wanted to be part of the board and I interviewed and my name was not recommended by that, I would feel slighted, right? And how do you deal that with trying to bring two chambers and three chambers together when you've already started a process where you're separating people?
I think that the recommendation isn't based on geography, so it's not a separation in terms of chambers. It's based on the skill set and the interview process.
Okay, no, I understand that, because I did a lot of interviews for other boards and stuff. Like, I see a more fair process of saying, here's our chamber board, these are the skill sets that we need.
Yep.
And then have each individual member that was interested in running for a board position provide their own skill set, so that everybody that's chamber member can read it and make their own decisions.
So that was done.
And not have the board recommend.
Yeah, so that's already been done. So we started probably just over a month ago releasing everyone's bio that stepped forward before the interview process. So everyone was requested to submit a bio with obviously their skills and their past experiences to us, and that got posted. So that got posted through the newspaper, through social media. That's right. So that was before the nominating process started. So everybody out there, our members, know everyone that has stepped forward to date.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the answer. I'll look forward to following this process to a little bit more thorough later on. Members of council, any questions or comments? We'll start with Councillor Bennett.
Mr. Mayor, I too am really interested in this election process. So when I saw the nominations and the people who have stepped forward in the paper this week, I noticed you had listed where they're from. And so is it the Stony Plain people that will run against each other so that 3 from Stony Plain are chosen, 3 from Spruce Grove are chosen? Or is it just, here's the whole 24 and the top 3 from Stony Plain, the top 3 from Spruce Grove? I don't understand that process. And if there are 3 from Stony Plain, 3 from Spruce Grove, you know, then if one of those is elected to be the president, then if, say, a Stony Plain one, so then there's only 2 regular members, so the total number will be 3? Like, I'm a little confused with the election process.
So, a considerable time ago, the decision was made that the board would be made up of representation, 3 from Spruce Grove, 3 from Stony Plain, 3 from Parkland County, 1 from Wobberman, 6 from anywhere, basically, as long as they hold a chamber membership in one of those 3 chambers. So the way that the election process will work, the executive will be voted in first of all. So the position of chair, chair-elect, vice-chair. So it isn't Spruce Grove people going up against Spruce Grove people or Stony Plain. It is just those people that have put themselves forward for the position of chair-elect. And it could be like 2 people from Parkland County. One of those gets in, that's 1 seat gone for Parkland County. The other thing that can happen is, say I was running and I'm representing Spruce Grove. If I don't get in as chair-elect, I have the opportunity to add my name to the ballot for directors, because what we didn't want to happen is we didn't want to lose any expertise by somebody not being voted in to a position that on the executive. So they get an option to add their name to the ballot.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Thanks for the presentation, Sarah. I know you guys been through a long process. Kind of started way back when Laverne and I were around there and Rick around a table and a general conversation. And it's quite exciting to see what's happening. However, I do share council's concerns with what's going on at this point in time. And I do have some questions because you raised the questions within your presentation. So one of the things that you made comments to was the chamber would stay status quo. However, you made mention that January 1st, the name will change to Greater Parkland Region. You made reference that you will operate under the Stony Plain bylaws. And now you're going to a board of directors that is substantially more than is approved through the bylaws. How is that all possible when you have no idea what's going to happen? And in 6 months or down the road, if they decide not to approve this, you have created something that you've been operating under misrepresentation or whatever you want to call it. That's probably the wrong word for it. However, have you had an opportunity to speak to them to allow you to do this under an interim type of thing?
Absolutely. So we took advice from the Canadian Chambers of Commerce. We've also taken advice from the Alberta Chamber and through Corporations Canada as well. And speaking to a couple of chambers, one of them being Wetaskiwin and Leduc, that have been operating for about the last 2.5 years and still don't have their paperwork stamped. Now, we're in a different position than that chamber because there was a financial difficulty with one of the chambers that was assumed in that coming together. We're not in that position, thankfully, with any of the chambers. We believe and have been advised that there is no reason why we will not become the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce. But as you've alluded to, Councillor Palechko, that you know, it's a peculiar situation because we need to keep going. We can't stop, and we need to work to a set of bylaws. So our legal counsel has advised us, again, we've worked on their advice, that we can operate under the Stony Plain Chamber bylaws, but with a name change. The interesting point you've raised, and we need to, what I personally would like to take it away, is the point that you've raised about the 16 board members, that isn't actually in our bylaws as 16. And I think that's a really valid point, and one that we definitely we do need to take away. So thank you for that.
So just in addition to that, with the 16 board members, now you talk about from specific areas.
Yeah.
And I think in the bylaws from the past, and you can correct me on that, but I do believe that the members that are on the Stony Plain must be of Stony Plain. So
They
I'm
do.
So I've got two concerns with it. One is the overabundance that you're going to have.
Yep.
And the second one is, I remember at the meeting for the unification side of it, one of the comments was that you would set the board up so that no one side would be overweighted.
Right.
Yeah.
This board that you have set up today, I can see being way overweighted, and I'll tell you why. 3 from Stony, 3 from Spruce, 3 from Parkland, and 1 from Wob. 6 members at large. If they all come from Spruce Grove, you have an overweighted board.
Yeah.
Which is what you made points to in the presentation originally would not happen. So how do we address this issue of the overweighted side of board?
We can't, so if the members vote, so we're, the recommended or the I guess the vetted, we'll just call them directors that we've, or names that we're going to put forward are still going to be voted on. And so we've made a good point to make sure that there was a selection of everybody of the names that we're going to put forward. That doesn't mean that the membership still has to vote on those. They can vote on whoever they choose out of those directors. So it could be one-sided, it may not be one-sided, but then that just means that more Stony Plain, more Spruce Grove, or whomever, they need to get out and get their names, and so there's a more pot to choose from. We can only do so much. Those 6 at-large numbers, we have no control over.
Right, I just wondered if maybe that should have been more specific in when you were talking about not having an oversighted board, because you have gone away from what you, in the unification vote, you have actually stepped away from what you directed members were going to happen. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that you can re-look at that. It's just a question, something that you might want to take back and have a look at so that that board can't be overweighted. So, and you may need to appoint 6 from Stony, 6 from Spruce, whatever that number becomes, and then having a member at large may be the smaller number that comes up, right? So just a couple of things that I've noticed in the presentation tonight, that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments? Councillor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation this evening. I share the concern, and I just want to make sure that I'm getting clarity on this. There were 24 candidates that were interviewed and had their bios, et cetera, et cetera. So the track committee is making a clear recommendation of 16 of those 24?
Correct.
Not the track committee.
No, the nominating committee.
The nominating committee.
The nominating committee.
Okay.
So, Councillor Lowry, as per our bylaws, the nominating committee has to be the president or the chair of the chamber, which is Stony Plain. Deb is the chair, is the president. She can appoint at least 2 members onto that nominating committee. So she actually had a committee of 7.
Okay. So in that process, would a nominating committee not be used to more so vet nominees to ensure that they were suitable candidates, not necessarily recommend a slate that would fill the positions? It just seems very odd as I look at this that essentially there's going to be, and I believe it was brought up, a recommendation coming forward from the committee as to these are the members we feel should be on the board. I think there might be more appropriate ways of doing that, and I'm actually wondering if you could talk to a little bit. Obviously 24 candidates is a rather large slate, but I'm curious as to why there wasn't potentially a consideration of a forum or something where the membership could get more information than just a bio and ask some tough questions and start to maybe get an opportunity to formulate a little bit of their own opinion.
So to answer that, Councillor Lowry, if you look at majority of chambers bylaws under the election article, you will see the nominating committee. They're typically all the same, so they're always struck a month before the election. They're always headed by the chair or the president, and they typically have at least 2 members in good standing as committee members. And it is that nominating committee's responsibility to make recommendations and go through that nominating process, whether it's a vigorous process or it's not, or there is no need for the process because there's acclamation. That's typically the way that chambers operate.
Want to follow up, Your Worship? Thank you. So in theory, could a nominating committee recommend more than the available positions?
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
You done? Okay. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Having been part of that committee once before in my past life, that's actually a good process. But I think if you can clarify for me, because what we used to do was we used to recommend multiple people. We didn't recommend 12 people specifically. If there was more for the position, which is when we had a couple of times votes for that type of thing, an election for that. This time, the way I'm hearing it and the way I'm seeing it is you specifically are going to recommend 16 people, and there's 24 that are running. So my concern is the same as everybody else here. You are now, you're getting close to telling people what it is that they should be doing, where the nominating committee should really have come forward with 24 names and said, here's 24 potential candidates. They're all running for positions. Now, the chair and stuff like that is probably another reason, but to be specific with somebody that you want to have on that board is drawing me some great concern as to how that board's going to be structured.
When speaking with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce this afternoon, I asked that exact question, and I was told that what we were doing was the appropriate thing to do. The nominating committee's job is to pick who ultimately recommend to our membership who we feel after interviews and going through resumes, who we felt were the best people to represent the board and to represent the chamber. So that's what we are doing. We've picked 16 out of those 24. Guaranteed there were some that should not have even applied, recommending to the membership that these are the ones who we have gone through 2 full days of grilling people and asking questions and going through resumes to pick up the best 16 out of that 24. But they still, in the end, they still have the choice to pick whomever they want.
Just a quick follow-up to that. I think that's a very fine line that you're walking when you're doing that. I think you're making your members, if a specific member has told somebody to vote to apply for that position, they're probably fairly confident in that individual coming forward. And by you not making recommendations of those people, I think that's a really fine line. And I get that that's a process that you've had that discussion. It's just it's not a very democratic process when it comes to an election.
Because all those names are still going to be put forward.
But 16 of them have a very specific recommendation from an individual group, which can be biased one way or the other, where your members, you should give your members the true ability to pick your board and hope that they've picked the right board. It's just like the democratic process that we go through here at council. Multiple people put their name forward, you have the opportunity to speak, and hopefully at the end of the day, the people have made the best choice that they can for somebody that sits at the table. Not always is that the case, but that is the democratic process. So just, I think it's one of the things that we've heard and you've heard tonight. It's a great concern for a lot of us at this table tonight, so.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. So again, thank you for your presentation, and I definitely wish you guys good luck. I believe this is a good path we're walking down in terms of amalgamating the three chambers to provide the services for our business community. However, I do share those concerns that I've heard on members of council that have mentioned is the way that the election process is happening. And maybe something that can be changed right now, but something may be brought forward to the Alberta Chamber and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Because, you know, you mentioned that everybody else has the right to still vote for everybody because their names are still on the ballot. But having the recommendation from the committee goes a long way. As you mentioned, that people do not have the time to go visit all 24 of these individuals. So if I attend the meeting and I'm going to vote, I've gone through the website, I've looked at the names. Some of those people I don't know. Some of them I do. But if there's a recommendation from the chamber saying, here's the people you vote for, I'm going to incline to vote that way because you guys had the chance to interview them, put them through the ringers, and review their resumes. I have not. So even though it's a democratic process, it's a skewed democratic process. And I think that's why I have a problem with it when you mention all that. I agree with the vetting them out and then coming forward. I don't agree with recommending people for certain positions, etc. Councilman?
I'm a little, I don't know that these ladies need to take back to their membership or what this discussion, where it's going to go. You and Deputy Mayor are quite concerned with the process, and you've indicated that council is quite concerned with the process. Personally, I'm not concerned with the process, and I don't know that it's a council decision that we've made here tonight. And so I would not, I don't want these ladies to go away saying, but Stony Plain Council is not in agreement with this process.
That's right,
So
and
please,
I did not say council.
No,
I said
but Deputy Mayor did.
That's, the Deputy Mayor can say what he likes, but when I said I have some concerns about this that he might want to talk about with the Alberta Chamber and the Canadian Chamber. I didn't say we, I said I had concerns.
But the indication is that our council is is questioning their process. And I just want to make sure that if it is a council decision, then every council member has expressed that opinion, that they are concerned about this. And I'm sitting here and I had questions. I don't really understand the process, but I don't want them to go away thinking or taking back to their membership that the council, Town of Stony Plain Council, has an issue with this. So could we just be clear on this process?
Yes.
Because we have really nothing to say or do with the chamber and their membership or how they elect their directors and their executive. So I don't want to, I'm just stating a fact, Mr. Mayor, that not all of council has spoken. Not all of council is upset or taking a stand here. So just to clarify, so that the message gets out to our Chamber of Commerce.
And well, what Councillor Bennett and I did not refer to as council has an issue.
I'll clarify that. I heard you speak tonight regarding some of your concerns, so.
No, questions.
So, right, some of your questions. So I will take that back. As for council, it is my opinion that the process may not be the correct process. It's a question that I asked to the ladies tonight for clarification. And again, I understood the clarification before because I sat on the process. We never actually made a direct reference to individuals running for that board. We brought names forward and we vetted who we wanted to bring forward, but we never actually made a recommendation on who should be or who should not be. We give each of them individuals an opportunity at a general election to speak. And that's the process. I think, Deb, you were part of that because when we did that. So where the concern comes is being specific to 16 individuals. So That's a concern that I have. It's not necessarily a concern that all of council has. It's a concern that I've heard from different people as well. It's just a question for clarity of how that should look and how that should not look. So I'll clarify that. So it's that.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett and Deputy Mayor. So again, thank you for bringing this forward. I believe that it's a good thing that the chambers are amalgamating together so it provide the services to our residents and the business community and hopefully to the economic viability of the whole greater Parkland region. I do have concerns about the election process that's outlined for me, and if you can do me a favor and bring those to the Alberta Chamber and the Canadian Chamber, because I think that there is some things that can be worked out better so that it does not look like it's an undemocratic process. And I gave you the reasons why I believe it is that way, because I don't have the time to research each and every member that's putting their name forward, and I will tend to go with a recommendation from a committee.
Can I comment to that?
Sure.
Is that okay? Can I do that? So then let's say that you go to the election and you haven't done your due diligence and you haven't done your homework and you don't know who any of these 24 people are and you go to vote.
Yes, and that is in every general election that happens in the municipal level, the provincial level, and the federal level.
So then would it not be beneficial to the membership then that we supply a board of 16 or a list of 16 people who we feel, after we've done our homework, that these are the best people for the job?
Okay, so let me just turn this around with you.
Okay.
What if we have next municipal election?
Yep.
Staff go and recommend and interview all their candidates that are running for mayor and councillor, and they put out a recommendation for who to vote for.
Yeah.
How would that feel as a democratic process, especially if we have somebody that wins that was not part of the recommendation? That's what I'm just saying. It does not feel proper.
Okay.
Like to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think, Mayor Choi, that we are a membership-driven organisation and those members pay dues to us, and for those dues they're expecting a level of due diligence from staff and from the directors that they voted in, and through the process I wholeheartedly believe that process was done incredibly fairly. And they're looking to us, many of our members look to us to make that recommendation on their behalf.
Yeah, make a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And maybe this will help clarify it. I asked a very specific question to get a very specific answer. There are 24 candidates. There may be 16 names coming forward, but I asked if they were capable and able to bring more than 16 names forward. And the answer that I heard was yes. So I think my thoughts and my feelings behind this are that if there were more than 16 candidates that they felt were qualified for these positions, they would be looking to bring forward more than 16 names. Now, I agree. I have some personal concerns and more so questions about the process. It's unusual. It's not a traditional democratic process. But there was a reason why I asked that very clear question. They are not required to limit and only recommend the 16. The mandate of the nomination committee is to bring forward the names of those that they feel would suit the board best. And I do agree that there's a paid membership who has probably put in place a mandate, and if they agree with that process, we're one chamber membership. We have a vote. The town will take that vote. We can take whatever opinion we want, but ultimately they have a membership. And that membership will approve the process, or the membership will direct that process not be approved. So I think the fact that they are able to bring forward more than 16 names, if the committee who has done the work feels that those people will be qualified, there is some clout in that as well. And if the list comes forward as only 16, or maybe the list comes forward as only 12, and those are the recommendations, that's up to the nominating committee. I don't think there's any mandate from anybody else as to what they should be bringing forward. And I would hope that the nominating committee would be stating very clearly if they did not feel that they had a full slate of suitable candidates. If they were short of feeling that they had suitable candidates, they would be encouraging more calls for nominations and so on and so forth. But again, I think we have to be very careful here in the opinion that we are projecting, because ultimately the chamber is here presenting this information to us, and we are certainly able to give our feedback. But the reality is we are a chamber member. And, individually, some of us are individual chamber members as well, and we can express that, but the membership provides that definition to the chamber as to what policy they want to see and how they want to see those elections done.
Okay, Councilor Haddis.
One comment. I appreciate that you went through the Alberta Chamber and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to get your process. And I'm sure that you've done due diligence in this process. So, you know, it is what it is, and I'm sure, in my opinion, that it's a fair process. So.
Okay. Thank you very much again, and good luck. I look for great things from the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber.
UPRCC.
All right, council, it is after 8, so we're just going to call recess till 8 o'clock. We'll come back to finish our agenda. 4 great presentations we had with our delegations, something for us to ponder as a council and as a community. Moving on to our agenda is business items. 5.1 is the pedestrian crossing update. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, worshiping members of council. Just a couple highlights, as I'm sure you've read the report in the package. Town of Stony Plain has 48 marked crosswalks that we maintain. One could probably consider we have 4 different types of crosswalks in the community, one being the controlled crosswalks that we have at every lit traffic controlled intersection. Type 1s and Type 2s, which are in the report. So the Type 1 is just a marked crosswalk that's got pavement marking and signs. Type 2 is the pavement marking signs plus pedestrian activated LEDs or some sort of form of light that makes the driver more aware of the fact that there's a crosswalk there. And then the 4th is basically every street corner is a pedestrian crossing. So we would have a lot of paint and a lot of time and a lot of people out there if we were to mark absolutely every intersection with lines. So typically our crosswalks are in places where there's a higher volume of traffic and there's a greater potential of pedestrians and vehicles having some arguments with each other. So we try to make sure that there's a bit more of a marking there so that that doesn't happen. In late 2018 and through the first parts of 2019, we had one of our CPOs, Brian Blaze, who was mentioned this evening with the bees. He came in as a practicum student with Grant McEwen with our particular CPO team. Stayed on and filled a maternity leave, and he's just vacated his position with the town of Stony Plain, and he's working for Parkland County as a community peace officer. Part of his job as the practicum student was to go around and do an inspection on all of our crosswalks, and he did things like measure the signs to ensure that they're at the proper height, made sure that the visibility was in good shape. Tree cover is a lot of things that he did notice, and made some recommendations about different types of things that were happening in the province related to visibility. So part and parcel of that is I think you've probably recognized over the last month or two, a lot of high-vis signs are going out, a lot of high-vis stripes are going in addition to the crosswalks. It's really highlighted where the crosswalk is. In the winter months, it's excellent because we don't have the pavement marking that is visible to the driver because of the snow cover and ice cover. So the high visibility improvements in the community have greatly provided a recognition to drivers where the actual crosswalk is. And one to highlight is in front of the registration business and the recycle motorcycle shop. A lot of people don't recognize there's a crosswalk there. Those 2 high-vis or 4 high-vis signs that have gone up recently, certainly a lot more drivers are aware that there's a crosswalk there. So with that, Brian developed a spreadsheet. He worked with the roads department in terms of some of the recommendations that he may have had or some of the deficiencies that were included, and the majority of those deficiencies have been corrected and marked off. We're about 50% through changing all the white signs and adding the high-vis, so high-vis signs, high-vis stripes, to all of our crosswalks that we currently maintain and mark. The 779 project, certainly with the additional controlled intersections and the additional crossing opportunities for pedestrians, that's made it a bit safer in terms of cars are physically stopping and people are walking across the street versus some of the intersections where it was just the overhead bay. So a 4-lane roadway, probably better that people are going at intersections where the traffic is physically stopped. Once that roadway is completed, there'll be 2 crossings that will just have the high bay, so motion activated by the pedestrian, so the amber lights will go on for people to walk across. So one of those will be located here at 50th Street, at the end of over by the Rexall, which is a fairly busy crossing. So that will be improved to a Type 2 crossing. And the second one is 57th Avenue, not the one by that comes out from the Glens. It's the next one north, which is 57th. 57th is offset. Again, that's another busy corridor for pedestrians. So those 2 will be lit for sure. Administration will continue to work with the CPO team and continue to monitor crosswalks in the community, and if there are type 1s that need to go to type 2s, we'd certainly recommend that through a corporate plan process, and the roads budget does have provisions for annual maintenance, so any improvements that we need to make or any additional crosswalks that may need to go in based on traffic volumes and traffic conflicts with pedestrians, we would certainly just do that through our typical maintenance practice. I think the only other addition is the CPOs in the school doing the Safe Pedestrian program. So the point, pause, proceed, and I think the other one, which I thought was kind of cute, safe to cross when your eyes lock, which is lock your eyes with the driver, and if they see you, then it's probably pretty safe to cross as long as they're stopped. So our CPO team is in the schools doing that, and as a result of that, City of Spruce Grove, they basically went over and mentored them through that program, and they're starting to implement that in their schools too. So a good regional partnership there.
Thank you very much for the presentation and updates on the pedestrian crossings in our community. Members of council, any questions for information? Councilor Loy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and I refer to page 24 of 124, and there's just one line there. It says administration will continue to access funding available. Is this grant processes? Is that what that line is to mean? And secondly, wouldn't this be an excellent place for our photo radar monies?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy. Certainly the Safe Roads is an example. We had a small grant there to assist in some pedestrian safety initiatives. As we qualify again, those types of grants are usually wait 5 years, you can apply again. We would certainly explore those, and if there are other specific to pedestrian safety or road safety, we would explore those and access them as we could to certainly assist us in paying for some of the costs as the report indicates. An intersection where you'd like to put LEDs in is about a $30,000 impact to us, certainly, because you need 2 of those, one on either side of the road. Mm-hmm. The non-lit intersections, still expensive, they're $400 per crossing, but a little bit more manageable under our typical operating budget. But if we can get grants to support that, just extends that operational budget also.
And the photo radar monies, does that not go into that?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Loy, again, based on the priorities of our corporate plan, we would determine what the best use of that reserve is, and that would be something that we would recommend back to council, whether it's used for this initiative or something else that has a higher priority. We would likely have that discussion during a corporate plan process.
Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, a question of clarity to the General Manager. On page 22, it talks about the Type 1, Type 2. It states in here $15,000 per site and $400 per site for Type 1, Type 2. And then I just heard you mention $30,000. Can you clarify when it says $15,000 per site, is that per individual pole site, or is that 15 per site as in 15 per crossing?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, sorry, my error on that. It's $15,000 per lit pool, so that would be $30,000 per. Okay. The 400 is correct. It's about $50 per sign and about $50 per vertical stripe. So you need 2 stripes, 2 signs per side. So you're looking at 200 per side, basically.
Okay. So Type 1 is accurate as per site. Type 2 actually should read per pole.
Correct.
Okay. So I do have a question in regards to the Type 2s. I know the picture that is included, that Type 2, I know that exists. I believe it's Meridian Heights, and I think up by Stony Central School, I think we have this as well. Along Golf Course Road, we have what I'm guessing are older versions of Type 2. They're the white sign, and they've got the very small pinhole LEDs. They're not very bright. They start misfunctioning in the really cold weather, and they just flash continually. Are those on the list to be upgraded then to the newer style of Type 2 that we've seen? Because these are very prevalent and they're incredibly bright and work very, very well in my opinion. I'm just curious if we're looking at replacing, especially since it sounds like we're replacing the sign anyways because the sign is white.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, certainly as our budget permits, we would upgrade those. it might be a matter of we can upgrade the LEDs within that white sign. They're embedded in the sign. It's not a matter of us going in, taking a drill and punching a bunch of holes in the sign and putting it up. Maybe we've got some pretty talented staff. We could maybe function that also, but certainly they have some life and they're nearing the end of life. So it would be one of those ones that we would manage through a replacement process.
So at this time, there is no identified funding and there is no plan to replace those within the current budget?
At this time, I don't believe. I'll refer to the General Manager of Planning Infrastructure.
Appreciate
it. Your Worship, through you to Councillor Laurie. So we have a very limited budget for this line item, in the order of $10,000 to $15,000 a year. So I can't remember the exact number, but it's in that range. So these kinds of expensive type 2s or somewhat expensive would take some careful consideration, prioritization, as we would not be under the current budget able to achieve much in a timely manner. So we'll have to consider that in future corporate plans.
Thank you. And follow up to that, then, Your Worship, if I'm looking at a total of 7, I would guess that's 7 intersections that are like this, so it's 7 times 30,000. I'm curious. I mean, that's a pretty large capital cost. I'm hearing that we've only got about the 10 to 15,000 a year. Is there not some type, like, would these not exist on a capital replacement plan somewhere, or were they overlooked? You know, understanding they only have a certain lifespan, I would like to hope that there would have been some type of plan for them to be replaced.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. Certainly, but I would suggest that the lights that we're discussing right now, the older style, are still functioning. They still perform a function. Not the LED is certainly a better light and a more effective light, and we see that in emergency vehicles. There are emergency vehicles that don't have LED lights, and you can certainly tell the difference when they're traveling down the highway. So as those lights begin to fail, our preference would be, or our action would be to replace them to the brand new style of light and the brand new LED lighting that would occur. And I don't believe you can buy the signs without the LED anymore. So as they fail and they're ready to be replaced, they would be replaced with the upgraded.
Thank you. And then one last question, Your Worship. Do we have any crossings that use the poles that go over the road? Do we have any of those that are within our scope?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, there's 2 going on 779. My understanding is they will go over the road. I'm not sure from both directions. At least one direction they'll go over the road, and they have to be high enough because of the traffic that travels on that particular roadway. I believe in Stony Plain, I'm not aware that we have any of that style. We mostly have the pole style with the light and the LEDs embedded in or on top of the sign.
Councillor Matties?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question. So on Golf Course Road, going into High Park, I've heard from a number of people the issues that the visibility isn't there, as well as the lights don't work. So if we can't change the lights right at this point, is there a way we can put another sign, a little bit before, so that there is that additional awareness that there is a crosswalk coming up, so that people would just maybe be able to, anticipate that?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Matthews, we can certainly look at that. I am also aware that, sometimes the buttons stick, and particularly when you get a lot of wet weather and then the freezing weather, it just sticks the button so that when you push it, it's not activating. Our staff are now going around and making sure that those lights will activate and putting a particular type of lubricant in there to assist in that not happening anymore.
Yeah, if I may just follow up, but I do use that crosswalk quite a bit, and I have seen several times where people have just flown right by me as I'm standing there proceeding to cross, and they just are not seeing, and if there was an ability to put an additional sign that, it was bright, that would make, it's just like the multiple stop signs that sometimes we see, that we have a warning that a stop sign is coming, that may help us do this at a lower cost.
Any questions of clarity and understanding? Yes, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like you to recall a few months ago when I talked about my visually impaired friend. And so some of these crossings, I understand how expensive they are, and I'm sure that they've been vetted through visually impaired factories, and they're looked at. The problem is that with each one that's different, it makes it more difficult for someone with mental challenges and with visual challenges to understand how each one is going to work. It's not like us who cross the street, we press the light, we see it comes on, we can go. Or we press the button, it's frozen, it doesn't work, we can see it doesn't work. When we're dealing with our residents that have these challenges, they can't see that and they can't decipher that something is not going on. So every time we get a new light or a different kind of light, it adds to confusion and truly it adds to their safety problems. It's a dangerous situation for them. So I know there's not much we can do about this except be aware that it's not just our abilities that are crossing the street. I might add that in 5 or 10 more years, might be my disability crossing the street. So maybe I'm speaking for me in the future. But just be aware that there are lots of different kinds of pedestrians, and we need to be aware of that and try and take that into consideration when we're adding new lights, when we have the old kind, the new kind, the kind that sometimes work, the kind that don't work. We just need to make sure that every resident that crosses a road in Stony Plain has at least a measure of safety as they go across. And sorry, Councillor Matties, I saw a pedestrian today crossing a road, lights, pedestrian cross, they're crossing on a white, car comes, turns right in front of them. I don't know what you can do. You can't legislate stupidity. But that's the kind of thing that we have to face all the time. And for those of us that can see this happening, it's a whole lot easier than those who are already facing challenges.
Your Worship, if I can make a couple comments there. Councillor Brennett brought up a good point about uniformity of signage, and in this instance, referring to those that may be physically challenged in one way or another. But this was also an exercise in uniformity and ensuring that the signs were the same or as close to us as possible as we could get them, and so on and so forth. And it also that comes up too often from the public. We get a lot of requests. I'm sure council gets a lot of requests about, could you put this sign there, that sign here, or one of these over there? And often our answer is no. In part, that's to attempt to ensure that uniformity for drivers as well as pedestrians. Just to people get used to what they get used to, and similar signs, and no matter what community you're in, similar color, similar visibility, whatever, does allow what I would think is, a part of, everybody is seeing the same thing, understanding that sign means this here, there, wherever we go, and that's, that's the whole point of national standards and provincial standards on uniformity. So, and I know that was part of the markings on the street side, and we made some changes. We had a lot of different stuff going on out there, and through this process, we're making it much more uniform. So,
thank you.
Thank you. I mean, just to follow up on that, quite a few years ago, Councillor Bennett made a motion to spend some money out of the Police and Public Safety to have noise-emitting devices that come out of the high traffic, high-speed areas, such as 779. With the replacement that is happening there, are those getting replaced so that there is those noise emitters that notify people that they can safe to cross?
Your Worship, we can look into that, and we've got the specs on that particular final development, so we can ensure that we know or don't know what's happening there and ask the question and get it back to you through email.
Okay. Thank you.
And one more thing, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you for indulging my soapbox tonight. So this accident that I witnessed, or this almost accident I witnessed today, was at the corner of the Red. And I have to say one more time, the province was wrong in taking away that turning arrow there. So now what you're seeing is a lineup for people who, because you have to wait now to make the left-hand turn to go, say, to the library. And so this particular car took off the minute that the light turned green and went right straight across the lines of traffic that were waiting. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt to say they probably thought there was a green light up there because there always has been. And now that has changed. And there's nowhere on anywhere that has told our residents that that has changed. There's no longer a green light that allows you to turn left before, with the traffic going north stopped. So perhaps we need one of those, a temporary, this signal has changed sign. And I would truly petition our provincial government to change that back. I know they told us that night that there's not enough traffic there. Yeah, they're wrong.
Thank you, and I think administration will take that forward when they have their next meeting with AT. But also, again, this is a half-done project. So as that intersection widens up, there is going to be an actual turning bay there, which allows people to queue up. So then the lineup going north and south alleviates, so you don't have the same number of turning pressures there. So hopefully that does a little bit better. And like I said, I think we said this last time regarding our storm management and stuff. We're not the subject matter experts here. We don't understand traffic flows. We don't know the counts and what it makes it safe or not. I do know what it is. It's a hassle right now because it's uncompleted. We got the lights that are changed. The poles don't even line up with the current road system because they're realigning that intersection to be a two-way lane instead of a three-way intersection. Again, I think you're right about making maybe AT needs to put some signs out and people are aware that this intersection has changed. Okay, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a comment and thank administration. I think this initiative is really great. It's very noticeable. I think back to my time campaigning, pedestrian safety was an issue that came up often, and so I think this will be much appreciated by the citizens of Stony Plain.
Thank you for comment. Any other questions for understanding clarity? I do have one just regarding some of the existing lights that we have. They're on solar, and a lot of the time, this time of year, solar doesn't last very long. And how do we get power to them? Because if they're not functioning properly, it's almost like not having the lights there in the first place.
Your Worship, they have a battery bank, so they're supposed to store during the daylight hours and charge up the batteries, and the batteries last during the nighttime hours. And we do understand they're made for Alberta. They do understand the light that we get, or the delayed light, or the reduced light that we get throughout the months that we have. Certainly our staff, if there's an intersection that you're aware of that's not functioning more often than not, make us aware of it. We do get, not complaints, but we do get made aware of some of them from time to time, and our staff are out there very quickly to address it. So each of them are very closely located to a power pool, of which I'm sure we can talk to our franchise friends and see if there's an opportunity if we had to do that at some point, because that was the best option. But so far, the solar lights, if they're having issues, we are out there addressing them fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? See none, Councillor Lloyd, please.
Yes, Your Worship, the Town Council accept the pedestrian crossing update for information.
Okay. Thank you very much, administration. Just like to echo some of the comments around the tables. Thank you very much for this project going forward, providing a lot more high visibility and a little bit extra safety for our residents. We are more than just the vehicle traffic in the community, so we're trying to promote all modes of transportation, walking, cycling, etc. So having the added safety to allow people to cross those highways and main collector roads are much appreciated. Thank you. With that, I'll call a question on favor. That is carried. Moving to 5.2, the MDP update. And go ahead, administration, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wait 1 second to get our presentation up. Thanks, Vincent. So I'll be presenting the Municipal Development Plan update for information. So this presentation will cover the project background and what we've done so far, the upcoming next steps, and any questions if there are any. So what's happened so far? I'm going to go over the purpose, why we're doing the project, the process we've gone through, and kind of an overview of the whole timeline. So first off, I want to start with what is a municipal development plan? I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with it, but for anyone who might be watching at home, it's the town's framework for future growth. This document sets the vision and the goals for all the development in our municipality, and it's essentially a roadmap for sustainable land management over the next 30 years. So why are we doing this in the first place? This update in particular was spurred by complying with overarching legislation. So the Municipal Government Act, which is our provincial legislation, and the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan, which is our regional legislation. Another thing that came about with this update was reframing the vision, for a lack of a better word. So you can see our existing vision from the current MDP on the left-hand side, and then the new vision that came about through the council visioning workshop. So the whole intent of this was to find a statement to identify who we are as a community and where we want to go. So something that's a little bit more aspirational and a little bit more current, as the current MDP was last updated in 2013. And also along with this update, we made some administrative changes. As you're adding new things into the document, that means some things become redundant, some things need to be shifted to fit in better. So that included some general text updates. We updated some statistics. We had a municipal census recently, so there's new numbers in there. And also, like I mentioned, we restructured some sections to make things fit a little bit better and flow a little bit better. So thinking back to last year, once the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan came out, which that document was updated in 2017, we created a regional context statement, which basically identified how our municipal development plan complies with the growth plan, to identify any gap areas where we weren't quite hitting the mark based on the changes that they had made. So as a result of doing the regional context statement, which was approved by council last October, October 2018, there were 4 policy areas that we needed to update to better align with the growth plan. So those included environment and sustainability, economic development, housing, and agricultural lands. From here, once we knew what we needed to do, we needed to conduct a policy analysis. So this took the form of kind of best practices. We hired a consultant to review some of the surrounding municipalities in the area to see how they were tackling some of these issues. And from there, we kind of got a list of recommendations, and we evaluated which ones were most suitable given our context and how we could incorporate those into the document. So there was an interim report and then a final report from our consultants that we've reviewed to inform the changes that we have made. And then to dig deeper into some of the administrative changes, there was a density target change from the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, so that you'll see that in the document. We updated statistics for population growth and employment. We updated certain sections to align with newly adopted plans, so one of the biggest ones you'll see is the areas of transition. With the adoption of the Old Town Community Plan, those 2 sections became very overlapping, where the MDP is intended to be higher level. We kind of generalized that section because the Old Town Community Plan dives into that additional level of detail, and that's kind of how that should be. So that was a big one. We made some map changes, and we also, like I said, general text updates and some restructuring. Now what we're kind of working through is the graphic updates. So this version that you see in front of you that's attached to this council package is the first draft that was publicly available. So we've been working with a graphic designer, going back and forth with all the text that we've changed. How do we make this look nice? How can we update our graphics to make sure that things are current? How do we make it the most appealing document that we can for any viewers who are reading it? So for the timeline, this is kind of like a grand overview of when this all started and where we're going and when we're hoping to wrap up. So the first phase was from April to August this year, where we launched the project, went through the visioning workshop, and conducted the policy analysis. And then we're in the second phase right now, which will be wrapping up at the end of December, working on our administrative updates, creating the draft, and doing public engagement. So the administrative updates and the draft and the graphic design, they're kind of a cyclical process. Every time we have a draft, we will circulate it for comments, and then we're making changes based on what people have said. And then coming in the new year, we'll have the third phase where we will receive all of the final comments, complete those edits, and submit the document to our approval authorities. That includes Council and the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board. So what's upcoming in more detail? So we have our public engagement, our open house tomorrow, December 3rd, from 3 to 7 here in council chambers. So the intent of that is to educate the community on what changes have been made, but also start a dialogue on the 4 policy areas that we've changed. We want to make sure that we can kind of cross-reference with, yes, we've checked off all of the legislative requirements we needed to make, but does this still align with what the community wants and how they view these areas? Once we have all of the comments back, we will do the final edits, generate a final document, and then that document will be submitted for approval. So we will take it for first reading in February. And then if that gets first reading, we will submit to the EMRB for their circulation process, and then we'll bring the document back for the public hearing, second and third reading at council. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for providing the kind of highlights of the update that's happening. Members of council, any questions or comments regarding the presentation? Councillor Loy, go ahead.
Yes, I have one question, please. Public input is tomorrow. Is that enough time? What would you say, 3 till 7? That's one day, 4 hours. Do we get enough public input at that particular point in time? Or should we have it 2 times, 3 times, or something like that over a lengthier period of time, but not overly long?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Loy. So as well as the session mentioned tomorrow, we are doing public engagement through our website. Comments are available to anybody in the community for another month until it comes back to council in February. So in January sometime, we'll take all the comments received, including the ones in person here and the ones online and through our social media, et cetera, encouraging people to get contact with us. I guess we're open for suggestions if an alternative is advised, but if the turnout tomorrow is sufficient, then I guess we would suggest that would be, that plus the online would be satisfactory. But we would consider other alternatives if tomorrow is deemed insufficient.
Yes, just as a follow-up though, we've been talking over the last several years about our engagement with our taxpayers and stuff like that, and I don't monitor it personally. I imagine you folks do, and as long as you're satisfied, I'd be satisfied, but I just want to make sure we're doing the best that we can to encourage our public to come and see us.
Thank you. Any more questions? Understanding, clarity? Go ahead, Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to administration. My question, it's a comment with regards to page 35 on 124. And I wrote my comments down before I got to the page 115, which was addressing the regional context statement. But on page 35, it talks about natural living systems. and the planned development to promote clean air, land, and water and address climate change impacts. And my suggestion was, with regards to actions required, there's no actions there. I think it's page 30. Let me just go to 35. Oops. Yeah, it said, so under that 2-3, it indicated there was no actions. And so I had suggested that we should recognize the impacts of climate change and develop strategies and policies to sustain our environment to meet the needs of our present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So basically, the definition is sustainability. I'm not sure if that's addressed at the page 115 or not, but I certainly would like to see something in there that gives us an action to promote development, plan development to promote clean air, land, and water and address climate change impacts.
Okay. So on that fifth column, I believe it's for actions required in the future updates.
Sorry, say that again?
I believe on the fifth column, it's for actions required in future updates of the MDP. So
Are we looking at the same thing?
yeah, so the MDP is a document that we have that's overarching our community for 25 to 30 years, and we revisit it every 5 years. So this is the 5th year we're looking at it. So that's an action for the next review. So if you scroll.
Okay, so scroll where?
Scroll up.
Okay.
Right, so this is for in future updates.
So okay.
We're the response is the 4th column, and then how we continue to go on further.
Okay, so then let's look at
the 4th column
is column here, which is to go back to 35. So that was so then that column says directions 1-1 and 1-2 of Stony Plains MDP promote clean air, land, and water to address impacts of climate change through policies that encourage environment innovation, promote energy. Okay, so we don't need the actions for the future.
No, because that's the future.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Go ahead, General Manager.
Your Worship, so the document, the first document is the October regional context statement that the council approved, if I'm not mistaken. And so that one, the future update is this update.
That is this update.
Right.
Okay. So then then that comment does apply then.
Yeah, just if I may clarify through your worship to all of council. So this table, the addressing the regional context statement, is pulled from all of the actions that were in the regional context statement, but it's not the regional context statement itself. The initial regional context statement did identify, there was a column that said this is how we felt we sufficiently addressed this topic. So that column we left out in this version. So anything that you see none or not applicable in the initial regional context statement, it does identify how we felt our current MDP did address that. So just to clarify that, if we still feel that there is an aspect of climate change or defining sustainability that we are missing, that is definitely something that we can consider to strengthen in the document for this draft.
Good. And you got my point, so good. Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Anything else? Okay.
Well, just give me a second, maybe.
Do you have another one, Councilor Matthews?
Oh, I had mentioned this before, but just on page 54 of 124, and I had mentioned this to administration just in passing today, but that the picture doesn't really reflect the vision. So the vision is a connected community embracing the future, champion of progress and community values. It'd be great maybe to have the Heritage Park with people in it that would show that we're connected, that type of thing. So just a suggestion for, and I know that you'll be looking at that moving forward.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one more.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Can I have one more? Okay, and on page 71, under 3-1A, it says that the town will support expansion and diversification of the economic base by allocating sufficient land for commercial and other employment land uses, including home-based businesses. So my question is, what land would we be allocating for home-based businesses?
Okay.
I was thinking possibly the community center or something like that.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Matty, so the document's an aspirational document that doesn't specify some of the details of some of the policies, but those would follow through in area structure plans or other planning documents as appropriate.
Okay, and it's also, we can also add that to our land use bylaw too. When we change our land use bylaw, if we want to see have every sector in our community open for home-based businesses, we can add that into. I think there's certain areas that can have home-based businesses and certain areas that can't.
This just specifically referred to land, and I just wasn't sure if the context was correct. So,
Right, but home-based businesses can be addressed through the land use bylaw? Yes. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. That Town Council adopt the NDP. Sorry. Yes, the Municipal Development Plan Update Report for information.
Okay, thank you very much for the motion. Members of Council, any other questions or comments to administration before I call the vote? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much, administration, for your presentation. I look forward to the open house that's tomorrow, and also the update when it comes back with all the responses from our residents. Look for that. So I call that all in favor? Okay. And that is carried. Okay, that ends the business items. Moving on to information items and council discussion. We'll start with Councillor Laurie. Do you have anything to update council with?
Not this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meyer?
Not this evening as well.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie?
I'll keep the trend going. Nothing this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
It's going to be an easy evening. Deputy Mayor?
No pressure.
Thank you. Now here comes the pressure. Councillor Bennett.
So, Mr. Mayor, on Saturday, I was at a workshop for a few hours. It was put on by the Public Library Services Board, and it was called the Red Tape Reduction. And of course, all departments are looking at red tape reduction, and I was very happy to participate in that. It was very well done. Our library hosted it. We had libraries from Edson, Northern Lights, that's the regional system, Vegreville, several that came out to Stony Plain, and we worked through our regulations and our legislation. And there are a few handouts that I took, and they talk about counselors and their responsibilities when it comes to municipal and intermunicipal library. So I have all of those if any of my colleagues are interested in that. I'd be very happy to share. Also, I think that I indicated earlier this evening that I'm now the chair of the Meridian Housing Foundation. So I take that responsibility very seriously, and am asking and hoping to see you all at the December 6th fundraising event that the Legion is hosting for us. It's a dinner and silent auction. You get the tickets through the Legion, $15. I told them to raise the price, but they didn't. And so I hope that you'll come and bid on a lot of the silent auction items that will be available for us. As you know, our new affordable housing project, Folkestone Manor, is working with the Legion to provide some affordable housing to our veterans. So it's a near and dear project to my heart, and I'm sure that we'll have a good representation there.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Matthews?
Anything for this evening?
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Matthews. And then I'm just a quick update, tomorrow, I believe Councillor Meyer and myself is attending the Edmonton Chamber event conversation with Minister Mandu. Minister Mandu is the Municipal Affairs Minister, so we just chat in to see what he has to say about what's happening in terms of the province, and maybe get some FaceTime one-on-one, just chat about what's happening in terms of ICFs and regional plans, etc. As well as mentioned by administrative staff, later in the afternoon is the MDP open house from 3 to 7. And you don't have to be here for the whole thing, just come and go, just add your comments. And at 7 o'clock, we have the Red Ribbon campaign kickoff as well. Again, it's just tying one on to your car, a little red ribbon to remind everyone that it's not okay to drink and drive. Drinking and driving is the #1 thing that causes fatality, especially at Christmas time, and it's 100% preventable. It's just poor judgment that causes those accidents. So hopefully everybody can be there to show the support. As well as on the 6th, if you have not yet signed up, please plan to. The Rotary of Stony Plain is having a Carol Fest, which is, I think it's like the 30th year, and it's hosted at St. Matthew's Lutheran Church, and it's a great way to kick off the Christmas season with the Festival of Carols. And as well, that's it. So with that, thank you very much, administration, for the work and the administrative reports. Council, thank you for reading your agenda packages and bringing the questions to the table and having that full and hearty discussion. With that, the agenda is now adjourned. Thank you.